Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of film, dance, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Callan III, and I'm thrilled to have as my guests today on Creative Focus, playwrights Brian and Molly McFadden. Brian, Molly, welcome to Creative Focus.
Thank you.
Let's chop it up.
Thank you.
So, you guys are my neighbors.
Yes,
Tower Press Development, 1900 Superior Avenue. How do you like it there?
Love it. We love it. We have a huge loft and we do play readings and high ceilings. It reminds me of New York, where we lived.
Fabulous. You know, I've been there like 14 years. We got the best landlords in the business,
We do.
Karen and Dave Perkowski.
Absolutely.
And all the artists and all the events. And in fact, Tower Press covered the actual, Tower Press had the actual art exhibit.
That's right.
And
a couple of weeks
TV20
ago.
and TV20 covered it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts, all right?
Okay.
Let's talk about New York living, because I know both of you lived in New York for over 20 years. What's it like? For the people who don't know, what's it like being an artist in New York City, and not a starving artist?
Well, when we lived there, it was wonderful. Just because we were very well connected in the theater world. We knew everybody, and I was a struggling working playwright. Everybody in New York has a survival job. And I was fortunate because for a long time I managed a restaurant in the theater district as my survival job.
Wow.
So I got to know everybody, you know, even the box office people. We just had a magic life because of the box office people, we never paid for a Broadway ticket. I mean, it was just amazing.
And I worked for a theatrical press agent
Yes.
who handled all the major shows on Broadway. This was in the 80s. Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady, Richard Burton in Camelot, The Revival, Elizabeth Taylor in Little Foxes, and
Dustin Hoffman,
Dustin
James Earl
Hoffman.
Jones.
It was sublime. And Brian had been living there much longer than I did. I came after I got my equity card.
Okay.
I love it. As an artist, I still love it. It's stimulating. You walk down the street in the summer, and if the windows are open, you're hearing the opera singers. You're seeing the ballerina dancers. It's all around. It's just in the air and the molecules, and it's intoxicating.
Yeah, really was.
What is it like auditioning for a Broadway show?
Wow. It's amazing. When I hit the ground running, I had an agent and she said, I want you to take your picture to all the ad agencies with your resume. And I'm walking around and she said, now to audition for a Broadway show, you've got to get there at 5 a.m. to sign up. And you sign up with everybody else, and you have your equity card, and you go in bunches, you know. And for musicals, I only was able to audition for one. Norman Lear was there. I don't know why he was there, but you sing a couple of bars. They want to hear the high notes. How long do you sustain it? And then you're out. You know,
okay.
You're gone.
And you were featured, and I'm so impressed. You were featured in the New York Times. Talk about that. Talk about that.
Well, as I love to perform any medium, and so I was doing film, TV, off Broadway, never got to Broadway. But in the meantime, I found a little club down in the Village, Jan Wallman's. And I was working with Colin Romoff, who was an arranger, composer, and he worked with Richard Rodgers, and he said, you know, kid, I think you could do cabaret. So my first show was at Jan Wallman's, and Woody Allen started off there. And Brian and Colin came, a little tiny room, and you're sitting on a stack of Coke bottles, and they're looking at me, and they're saying, breathe, stop, breathe. I was so nervous. I just went from song to song to song. And after the show, he said, you're like a frog. You got to come up for oxygen, Molly. I was a runaway train. And so Brian wrote Patter for me. And I started calming down. engaging with the audience, talking to them, breathing, which is so important. You and I know that, right? And how did it go from there?
She got better.
Yeah, I got
to the point where, after a few years, I mean, she got some good reviews in the major newspapers, like you said, the Times, and she started working from Washington, D.C., all the way up to Connecticut, up and down the East Coast, doing club shows.
Wow.
And it became a part of her whole career. She was doing commercials, she was doing cabaret, and she was doing regional theater. It was harder to get booked in New York, but she did a lot of shows in the regions too.
So Brian, I know that from reading your book, your wonderful book, that you started out as a thespian in high school. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I come from a theatrical family, kind of.
Okay.
That is to say, my parents weren't in show business, but on my mother's side, she had an uncle who was in Otis Skinner's company. And my great-grandmother was Victor Herbert's first cousin. They were close. And on my father's side, we called him Uncle Jack, but he wasn't my uncle. He was actually my cousin's husband, Jack Haley, who was the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
So I had these people talk to me about, and I was like, oh yeah, and I always loved movies and I always loved musicals. So when I hit high school, that's all I wanted to do. And I got very involved in it. And I wound up having the lead in the senior musical my junior year and then my senior year. And then, I moved on from there and I went to college and my parents said, all right, you're going to college now. I don't want you fooling around with theater, we'll make a deal with you.
It wasn't LaSalle, was it?
Yes, it was.
Oh,
LaSalle
LaSalle.
University.
See, I did my research.
You sure did. And so I said, okay, I won't do theater. The carrot stick thing was, and junior year, you can go to the junior year abroad program. Well, as it turned out, they made an experiment and sent 6 sophomores to see if they could handle the junior year abroad program. So my sophomore year, I wound up going to Europe for a year at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland.
Okay.
And
that's impressive.
That's how I got out of theater for a while.
For a while. How did you guys meet?
I was going to graduate school at Florida State. My undergraduate was the University of Florida.
Okay.
And they wanted me to stay at the University of Florida in a new master's program for theater and acting. I never left acting. But Florida State was connected with the Oslo State Repertory Company in Sarasota, Florida, where I grew up. So I knew of the Oslo, and I knew how sublime it was. They had actors and actresses from New York and from Yale, and I went, I want to go there. So I got into the program, and to put myself through, I was a janitor. And so I would clean the big airplane hangar. It was in an old abandoned airplane hangar, very big. And I'd sweep and I would empty the garbage and whatnot. And I was all alone in this huge room and I'm bending over counting the bottles or something. And from way across the room, I felt somebody looking at me. And I popped up. I turned around. There's this good-looking riverboat man. It was Irish, with a big smile, and I was pissed. I was like, who are you? What do you want? Stop looking at me. And he said, oh, well, I'm from New York. I'm the playwright. I went, uh-oh, busted.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'd been commissioned to write the book for a musical, an original musical.
And we all were buzzing about, playwright from New York is coming, blah, blah, blah. And I went, okay, fine. And I flung my bag of cans over my shoulder. And he said, do you know where Neil is? Downstairs. Walked off and went, boy, did I blow that. Then we became friends.
But apparently, no.
Neil came in after class, came up to me and said, hi, you're here. I said, yeah. He said, have you met anybody? I said, well, there was this gorgeous blonde with a ponytail. And he looked at me and he said, "She's married, don't you go near her." She was married at the time. That changed years later. Oh.
High school sweetheart. You know, I wanted to continue theater. He did not. So
You had some, you know, looking at your resume, some fabulous roles like Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, Gypsy, Long Day's Journey into Night.
Yeah. Many. I love, as I was saying, when I was growing up, I started performing from the moment I was a toddler and said, I'm going to leave home. And I did a production. Makeup, costume, filming, and my parents were like, "Are you ever going to leave?" Well, I'm still getting ready. So it was always in my blood. In high school and college, I always was in heavy drama. Dylan, a lot of Tennessee Williams. I was always performing in those. And not until I got to the Oslo did they discover I could sing. And then I did a musical. And I just came alive. I loved it. So you asked me which I like the most.
Yeah.
I love them both because they both are vehicles which present a message about humanity. I love in Gypsy, with the music and the singing and the emotional content, this woman is really struggling, and that comes across. With Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, you are just feeling for this young couple and how they're navigating their lives with this family drama, this Southern, Eugene O'Neill. I did Desire Under the Elms. I learned so much in those plays and those characters. I wish I could go back and perform them because now, being older and wiser, I understand so much more of the inner workings of those characters and their drama.
Is Night and Day from is that from a play or
I think
no?
it is. I think it was from a play. Night and day, you are the one. And I don't know, it would have been in the 30s.
Okay, all right.
But I think
Is it Cole Porter?
it was written in Cleveland at the, what's the big?
The Alcazar.
The Alcazar.
Cole
Cole Porter.
Porter wrote it at the Alcazar.
At the Alcazar. Yeah, I found fascinating.
Okay, so why don't we listen to a little bit of Molly singing Night and Day? How about that? I love that song.
I do too.
I can tell.
I do too. And when I started cabaret and singing all these phenomenal songs, I worked with Colin. He was a phenomenal arranger, and I worked with a great acting coach, and they helped me get over just going for the notes. Go for the meaning. What are they singing about? And Margaret Whiting was a big fan of mine, and Sylvia Sims. They said, "You got it, kid," because the actress in me.
Right.
So I was able to deliver both. Julie Wilson, oh boy, when she would perform at the Algonquin, place was packed. Never did anybody interpret Stephen Sondheim so beautifully. No.
Brian, I want to get to you for a second. You wrote a fabulous book.
Thank you.
What's the title of it?
Tales I shouldn't tell my daughter.
I love that book. There's a segment in there that I want you to share with the audience about Steve McQueen.
Oh.
Tell that story.
Well, earlier I mentioned that I went to Europe, to the University of Fribourg for a year. And during that time, we traveled around Europe all the time because unlike the United States, universities in Europe have lots of time off.
Okay.
It's amazing. And we finished our exams, spring exams, and we decided to go to the Grand Prix in Monte Carlo. So we all rented a Volkswagen bus, and a bunch of us jumped in and went down to Monte Carlo. And while we were there, we decided, let's try out the casino at Monte Carlo. And so we went in, and I was strapped for money. And I figured, well, I got about 20. Now, you got to remember, this is in the 60s.
Right.
The dollar was worth a whole lot more in Europe then. But I only had about $20 to bet. And I'm walking in, and I saw a guy I knew from Georgetown University, and he was coming out, and he said, I won $250. I said, will you lend me $20? I'll give it to you back when we get back to school. He said, yeah, sure. So now I have $40. And we went in, a buddy and I, and we went in and we played roulette. And all we did was play odd and even and red and black. And we got lucky. And we won. Each of us won almost $200 each.
Wow.
We just kept doubling down. You know? And so we had all this money. And we said, let's quit. And we quit. And that was the public casino. They had a private casino that you had to pay to get into upstairs. So let's go upstairs. We got the money. So we went up and we paid to get in, but we didn't want to gamble because they had this gorgeous bar and lounge overlooking the marina with all those expensive yachts in it. So we went in, we ordered a couple of cognacs, bought a couple of cigars, and we sat in these big leather chairs overlooking the marina. And the bunch of kids we went with suddenly came in, and they had been in the private lounge. And so we got a table, and we're all sitting around. And one of the gals, Susie, she went to the ladies' room, and on the way back, she came in and said, Steve McQueen is sitting in the bar in there alone. And she said, I'd love to get his autograph. And a friend of mine said, hey, Brian, you're pretty glib. Why don't you go in and see if you can get Susie the autograph? And I didn't want to do it at first, but then they swore that they'd, buy all my drinks and cigars. And she said, if you can get that, I'll buy you the best dinner in town. And I said, you're on. So I walked in, and sure enough, he's the only person at the bar, he and the bartender, sitting down the end, and he was a chain smoker, so he was sitting there smoking, he had a drink, and he was just staring straight ahead. So I walked in, and I sat at one chair away from him and ordered another cognac and sat there, let a little bit of time pass. So I said, obviously, I know who you are, and I'm just wondering what you're doing sitting in a bar here alone. And he just looked at me and he said, I had an argument with my girlfriend and I'm trying to calm down. And he looked back straight ahead. So a little time passed and I said, okay. Well, my name is Brian, Mr. McQueen, and I got a favor to ask. And he said, what's that? I said, and I made this up. I said, my girlfriend Susie said she'd sleep with me if I got your autograph. And he just gulped on his drink and did a double take. And he said, she did what? And I said, yeah. And he said, wow, okay. So one of us can get late tonight if I sign an autograph, huh? And I said, yeah. And so he grabbed one of those bar napkins, and I gave him a pen, and he said, what's her name? And I said, Susie. And he wrote something on it, note, and he folded it very neatly, and he handed it to me, and he said, now listen, I don't want to see you or any of those others in here tonight, because if I do, I'm going to tell Susie, you told me that you'd get laid if you got this autograph. And I said, mum's the word. He said, good. have a good night. I said, thank you very much, and I walked out. I always thought he was the coolest guy in the world, and he was.
Great story, great story.
Thank you.
What did it say on the napkin?
It said something like, let's see. To Susie, I hope you'll remember the evening when we were at the bar in the casino as much as I will. Warmest regards, Steve.
Okay.
And she went nuts. And I got a great meal out of that.
Was that all?
That's all. We were always good friends.
Molly, let's talk about living on the moon
Okay.
and bring in my special character.
Oh, you want to? Okay, let me. Oh, yes, let me see. Here she is. Oh, living on the moon. I couldn't do it without Miss Memory, right? I gotta get the hands in and the fingers. Ah, come on, hurry up. I'm so, hello, honey, how are you? Stop. I'm so excited. I'm gonna be a star. Okay, calm down. He wants to talk, okay? About living on the moon. Are you ready? Of course, I'm always ready. I'm ready for my close-up. She's very cheeky.
I see.
I know. Well, living on the moon, it is a show about my mother. I'm her mother. Named Memory. I love that name. And my mother comes back. Music unzips the universe, allowing her to slip through, and we visit. Because my mom, unfortunately, passed away from Alzheimer's. She had it for 12 devastating years in the 90s when we still were learning so much about it. And I had to stop performing. I had to take care of her, Brian and I, and it was quite a saga. I say it was anyway. So I was doing a show and I thought, years later, in fact, the show I wrote here in Cleveland. And as I was singing, I thought, wouldn't it be neat if my mom came back as a puppet and we would talk about those 12 years? Because I didn't really get to say goodbye to her. Anybody with Alzheimer's, you don't get to say goodbye. And it was an inspiration that came out of my writing with the ensemble theater and stage rights. And it was called Gershwin and Pickles. And when I did the cabaret act, and then all of a sudden, I appeared. I just took over the show. Everybody just loved me, right?
Right.
You would agree, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
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 Anyway, so we talk about those 12 years, and we, revisit it, relive it, and the toll it takes on the people who are caregivers, because I had seen so much about Alzheimer's, and I said, isn't there a way to tell the story without just forgetting, with humor, pathos, and music? I love to sing. I've got you under my skin. Okay, stop. I'm sorry. Anyway, so we did that show, and it grew into a 60-minute show with just Memory and myself. And it goes through the whole journey of where at the end I go, you really need to get off my arm. You need to go. I need to be free. Too bad. It's very hard. But finally I do leave. And you know why? You gonna tell him? I realize it wasn't my fault. I thought it had been, and I'm able to let her go. Well, now, when did I write that? 2019, I guess?
Yeah.
About 2019. Yeah. I did it last summer at Border Light Festival. I did it again. I had performed it in New York and brought it back. But now the show's different. You gonna tell him why? I guess I better. I do research for Alzheimer's. I let them poke me and look at me and prod me and trying to help find ways to delay the onset of Alzheimer's. And through the process, they found out I'm in the early stages of it. I have the gene. That's right. I'm not too thrilled about it, but I realized with that knowledge, I need to incorporate that in my show. If you get early early diagnosis, such as me, I'm so early, you can find ways to prevent the onset through diet, exercise, meditation, and drugs. And so I'm trying to help them get the message out. Don't be afraid. Fight it. You've got hope. It's so much different now than it was when I had it. It was abysmal. So that's memory.
That's memory. You did a play together, Scratch. You did the melody. Okay,
music,
and Brian.
I did the book and the lyrics.
Okay, talk about that a little bit. Scratch.
Scratch. It all started when we were still living up in Michigan before we moved here, and I came home and Molly was watching an old movie called The Devil and Daniel Webster, and she said to me, "This would make a great musical." And I went, okay, let's think about it. And, we didn't need to get any rights. It's in public domain.
Oh, okay.
So I said, let's give it a shot. So I rewrote it to make it more the way we wanted it. As a matter of fact, it's totally different now, but it's based on that simple plot.
Okay.
For anybody who doesn't know, it's a farmer who sells his soul to the devil, and Daniel Webster is a friend of his late father's, and he comes to help him get his soul back from the devil.
Got it.
And so we wrote it, and we did the music and lyrics. It was done in a workshop production up in Michigan at the Midland Center for the Arts. And we've had it sitting on the back burner for the longest time, but now that we're here and we have a great deal of time, we're going over things that we've written and created. And we're in the process of trying to get that on its feet and produced.
Okay. Yeah. We have a clip of Scratch.
Okay.
So let's take a look at it.
Off we go, gonna do some dancing. I know this baby's Christmas, then I come here. All his friends that meet in the valley at this time he's shall best known. Come on, boys, we ought to do the valley. Just might be some kissing. Gather around the
Hey, okay. So what's it like working with Brian? And Brian, what's it like working with Molly?
She talks, I listen.
No, it's interesting. When we moved here, I said to Brian, I want to write. And he said, go for it. And I'm very blessed because he's a phenomenal writer and dramaturg. He really is. And so during the pandemic, we would write and we would watch films and theater pieces. And I would say, why did I lose interest? And we talk about too much exposition, not enough action. So we're each other's best
Sounding board
cheerleader. We know of what we speak. We know when something's working or when it's not. And we're able to have a positive dialogue. But we had to grow into that. I mean, I will never forget when I was doing theater in Rochester at the Jiva. And Brian invited me to the Eugene O'Neill to see his play, China Beach. And I went. I was blown away by that play because here's this affable, good-looking, fun-loving Irishman. But I saw that play and I was just stunned how phenomenal it is. And afterwards, Brian's, let's go get a drink and da-da-da. And I went, I want to meet the person who wrote that play. That is amazing. And we talked. And he has many sides, many facets,
It's amazing. I mean, you know how many playwrights would give to have their work at O'Neill? I mean, that's the pinnacle. I've had 3 plays that were semi-finalists, but I've never been able to get over that hump. But I mean, that's extraordinary. Extraordinary.
It's pretty good if you get to be a semifinalist, considering the odds.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
it really is.
But you guys are, you got it going on big time. I'm so impressed. So what's next for you?
Next, I'm writing a new play on my own. Molly and I have a play. It's actually her play, but I'm helping along here. It was when she first came to New York, and she worked for Seymour Krauss, who was the press agent who did all those big Broadway shows. Mm-hmm. She's writing about that experience. And it's very funny, and it reminds me of that movie, My Favorite Year, it's about the Sid Caesar show, actually. And because it's a time in the mid-'70s, mid to late 70s, and it's what New York was, what theater in New York was like then, and it was crazy there. Patty Chayefsky had the office across the hall, and he used to come in and hide under her desk when the IRS people came looking for him, and he'd come in and borrow stamps, and the actors and actresses who came, and when they did a show with Claudette Colbert, and Molly brought me backstage to meet her one night, and she took a liking to us, and every time she was in the office, she'd say to me, "Now you're going to marry her," and she'd kind of go, "Oh yeah, she'll have me," and then she'd get to her and say, "Now you're going to marry him, aren't you, if he ever asks me." So.
We're still writing. Brian is working on a new play also that he's working on, and I just finished The Downside, which will be done at the Outside Circle Theater in Elyria, and it's about us, transition, changes, ageism. We talk about, you get to this point in your life, and I didn't get on Broadway, and Brian's like, I didn't get a Tony. And we
didn't get on Broadway either.
But we talk about life and the journey, and we just can't not write or perform,
So Brian, and we should have, I should have asked you this. Right? So where can people buy your book?
Yeah.
Tales I Shouldn't Tell My Dog.
Okay, I just finished it this fall, and I just put it out on Amazon.
It's on Amazon,
It can be purchased on Amazon.
Okay.
And
what's the other place? I can't remember.
That's for bookstores, and I don't have the time to. I'm going to go out and try to do some book signings, but you have to arrange all that with the independent bookstores, and I had to get it published by somebody else so they can sell it. There's so much involved in it that you don't know about till you do these things.
Right.
I'm just happy I finished it.
Yeah, it's a great book. Could I say goodbye to Mary?
Oh, she would love that. Craig Marin and Olga worked with Jim Henson, and they created her.
Yeah, I was going to mention that you worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that was for an HBO special, right?
That's right. Yes, and I worked puppetry with them. I never studied it, but she was a natural, except I have to say, when I talk, you see her lips moving. Hey, I'm not a ventriloquist.
Edgar Bergen was the same way.
Oh, I know, but, I'm not a ventriloquist. Well, I'm not a dummy. I have loved every minute of this.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank my special guests, Brian and Molly McFadden and Memory, for hanging out with us today on Creative Focus. So that's it, Cleveland. We're out. But remember, a true artist is not only inspired, but inspires others. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV 20 and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.